Tana, we talked about it a lot recently. Well, the best way to get sort of a full picture of an experience like Tana is to get people who have either used it in a high level of detail or are using it on a daily basis. And we have done that. We're very, very, very lucky to have Eve Chapman, Brage Bang, and Danny Hatcher here on the channel today. This is going to be a much longer video, but it's actually, if you want to, you can use the chapters below for each of these guys' sections to dive into how they particularly use it. So Eve Chapman uses it as part of a day job in managing all aspects of it, and it's really interesting to see how she's been using it, because she's been using it for a little bit of time now, so she definitely has a lot of experience of Tana already. Brage is in a very similar boat, manages a podcast and his sort of daily work in IT, and you can sort of find his YouTube channel below. Everyone's links will be below as well. And Danny Hatcher, who has been on the channel here before, who's been exploring it and is an existing Obsidian user, so if you're looking for that perspective in how it compares to Obsidian, then this is probably a great video for that. But I'm going to pass over to these fantastic minds, these three minds, who are going to dive into Tana and show you a little bit more about how they use it on a daily basis, or at least how they're using it right now. Anyway, folks, a big, big thank you. Hopefully you find it useful. If you don't know what Tana is and you're like, Francesco, what are you talking about in this video? Then you can find the link to what is Tana in a bit more detail that we did last week. Anyway, folks, pass you over to these fantastic individuals. Cheerio.
Hi, I'm Brage Bang. I'm the manager of a children's podcast called Snip Snap Snooter. I'm a published author of this book about pigs farting through space. And I also have a day job as a sales professional in IT. And I try to use Tana for all three of these endeavors. I'm going to take you through a couple of my walkthroughs, but if you want to see a more thorough rundown, you can check out my YouTube channel, which is linked here and probably in the description of this video. Let's just get right in. Okay, first things first. Let's hide this. Whoops, that's embarrassing. I use Tana to manage pretty much all my day-to-day activities. I try to keep a track of all my to-dos and tasks. And I have a quite good setup, if I do say so myself, of just tasks I'm doing, a list to pull from, scheduled tasks and backlogs, which is set up just using Tana's searches, excluding things I don't want to see every day, like bucket list items, and then just filtered by the status of the task. I also have a diary, which I just made a video about. I'll show you in a second my fake diary, so I don't have to take you through the real one. So my main uses of Tana are for the podcast. I'm just going to go into our main kind of podcast field here. This is for the children's podcast Snip Snap Snooter. I manage all our episodes, basically the status of recording and writing, etc. I filter these episodes out into different tables, in which I can work on specific things like live streams. This is for live streams. Exclusive shows on our club, etc., etc. And I also have different tabs for different projects. And these setups are just using the basic setup of my super tags, filtering them out and working with contextual nodes. And it's a very pleasant system to work in for me. I also use Tana for script writing. So this is my script writing space, which I try to use for long form writing. I have a couple of spaces in here. I have an ideas concept tab where I basically write down any new ideas for books. Tana should be a book. And then I call this an adaptation, original, whatever. This get ranked in my ranking system for what I should be working on at any given point, depending on what I should be focused on. I use these spaces for basically working through the scripts. For Aladdin, for instance, I have these hidden fields which I use for ranking, but then I have my outline draft section, where I basically outline my stories, and I try to make new tagged nodes for any character or props or places that appear in the story. I then structure the stories using Dan Harmon's story circle, and then I write it out. This is the draft for this story. And any character, place, or prop that gets tagged in this outlining process ends up in this library automatically, because I've tagged these by character, prop, and place. And these are found using this grandparents descendant with refs function, so that I can have these super tags, prop, character, and place, work all across the script writing space, but this library for this specific script only finds the ones that are within its domain. So I use this for long form writing. It has some limitations, but it also has amazing potential, like mind-blowing potential for using basically the same nodes for different parts of the production process. I'm looking forward to exploring this in further videos on my own page. I also use Tana to manage my personal life with my fiance. We have some tiny budgeting setups, basically tabbed setups that finds expenses, etc. You can calculate the value of columns inside these Tana tables. So basically having a look at the price of objects that we want to buy, who is it for, what category does it fall under, larger objects as well, and then purchased objects. Very simple stuff. I'm working on a training setup for Tana. For now, this is a very simple space where I track these different workout days, sort them out, and then I'm exploring different ways to set up sets and reps for maximum ease and searchability. Alright, so those are the things I wanted to show in my main space. I use Tana for a lot of sales work. Inside this space is a kind of dummy CRM system that I've set up. I have a great live stream. I have a live stream. Whether or not it's great is up to your judgment. But I have a live stream about the construction of this, where basically leads, which contain companies, actions you should do, meetings, activities, etc., lead into a sales pipe with deals. These deals move along a sales process. In the end, they can be won or lost. If they're won, they move to this won table. If they're lost, they move to the lost table, and you can explore and give more information on why it's where it is. This is put into a forecasting tool, and the forecasting tool basically finds deals that is within, in this case, this quarter, by likelihood of or confidence of closing. You can see the summed and average values, and this is just an interesting way to kind of go from my today node, which has simple like review setups and tasks, etc., meetings, etc., and then take this fluidly into a CRM system that can be shared across all my sales team. So that's the first thing I wanted to show inside the fake workspace. The second thing is the diary. In my today node, I have a diary field where I just make some diary posts, add some information about productivity, fun, some text, etc. And this gets pulled into my diary space. The diary space is mainly constructed to be a pretty space to look at your memories and what's happened in your recent past. And I'm very fond of it. So this is a quick walkthrough of my Tana space, and I hope it gives some impression of how I use Tana. What excites me the most about Tana is the ease with which I can explore new systems. The fact that I can just pull up a super tag, give it information, give it properties, and then set up filters and queries to pull this data all around my workspaces, share it across teams or different users, just blows my mind. I think this is the most exciting tool I've worked with since I don't know when. Before using Tana, I was an Obsidian main. I would say the great pros of using Obsidian is the fact that it's so easy to write long form in comparison to Tana, where it still is a bit of a clunky system because of the outlining structure, the node-based structure. I don't think this is necessarily a bad thing long term, but for just flow of mind writing, Obsidian still probably is an easier tool to use. But everything else, all the other things that I note down, all my systems, all my notes from meetings, all my to-dos are just so many thousandfold times powerful in Tana than it was in any other system, any other to-do system I've used. And I'm very confident that I'm going to move more and more of my workflows into Tana. And basically, as the team explores, giving new views, document views, giving more functions, I think this tool can be a powerful second brain in a way that these other tools really haven't. So, quick run through of my workspaces, my uses of Tana. I hope this is interesting. Please stop by my channel if you want to learn more, or catch me on Twitter or in the Tana Slack community. Bye.
Hey there, my name's Chapman. I'm a digital creator as well as a marketer, and today I want to show you how I use Tana. So I work a full-time job as well as being a creator, and so that makes my life pretty busy and hectic, and there's a lot of things in it. So I have been loving using Tana to organize all of that. Before Tana, I used a combination of Roam and Notion, and I love Roam for the flow and the fluidity and just being able to get things in on a daily page. But I love Notion because there's so many, you can, really structure your data, and there's so many different ways that you can view that data. And I feel like with Tana, those things have come together. So let me dive in and show you how I do that. Okay, so there's 3 ways that I use Tana. The first is to manage my work in my full-time role. The second is to manage my creator life. And the third is I manage my notes, my Zettelkasten, and my digital garden, whatever you want to call that. So for me, everything starts on the daily page, which I think is a beautiful feature of Tana. It's not unique to Tana, but it's a great way to be able to just dump things in, tag them, and then get them somewhere later. So if I wanted to add anything to any of those areas, if I want to add a project to my work life, I could dump it in here. If I wanted to add a content idea, I could dump it in here. So in my full-time role, I'm head of digital brand and operations. So I have a lot of knowledge that goes around, and it's a really big role. And so I love using Tana to organize all of that. A big part of it is my projects and tasks. So before Tana, I used Roam. Before Roam, I used Notion. Before Notion, I used Trello. So I've never really used a traditional project management tool or a task management tool because I feel like I have my own structure and I like to kind of organize that in a certain way. So one of the great things I feel about Tana is that you can easily view the same data in a whole lot of different ways. So here you can see there's a whole lot of tabs along the top. So I just keep all of my projects in here. It's just viewed as a list, and I can group that list by different statuses. So this is what we call a live search in Tana, which is probably one of the most powerful features. In Notion, you would see this maybe as like a linked database, but it's still a fairly advanced feature if you were going to just be a normal user in Notion, whereas in Tana, it is literally just built into the product. As you can see, you can view this in a whole lot of different ways. I view this as a list, and then you can group it in different ways as well. So you can group it, I've grouped it by status, but I could group it by any of the different fields that I use in the super tag. So super tags are just a way to say this is a particular thing. And super tags each have all their own fields that you can then add. So anytime you add that super tag, those fields are then related to that particular node. Then I have a whole lot of different ways to keep tasks. And I think this is one of the benefits of having all of these different views and these different ways to view your data is that you can then get really focused in on what you need to know for that particular task or that kind of thing. So I have everything that I need to do on each of the days of the week here. So there's everything I have to do Monday. So it just searches for all the everything that's tagged as Monday. And it's really easy to set these up. Then I have all the tasks that are not tagged or not scheduled yet. I have a whole lot of recurring tasks that I'm waiting on, tasks that I've thrown in at some point and I haven't organized yet. So that's my task inbox. And so this is just a really great way for me to be able to manage all of my projects and tasks. I keep a whole lot of other stuff in here as well that is about my role, a lot of processes, a lot of operational things. So I've got a list of all of our staff, all of the roles that we have, who is in that role, processes of that role, and then down here a whole lot of different processes that we're building out for our company. So that's how I manage my full-time role. It's obviously a big part of my workspace. The second thing that I use Tana for is for my creator life. So I manage all of my goals and my planning. All of my products are in here, so I can easily come in and I can see all the different types of products. Each of these have the link to my Gumroad, so I can like easily just come in here and find what I'm looking for rather than go to Gumroad, find the link, that kind of thing. So that's really exciting. That's one of my favorite parts. But I think a really powerful part of this and where I work the most is here in my content hub. And so you can see I've got a whole lot of things, different ideas for content. I, create YouTube content, I create Twitter content, I create for Instagram and TikTok, and I'm a full stack creator in that way. And so any idea that I have, I can dump on the daily page, tag a Spark idea, and it ends up here. But then I can view this in a heap of different ways. So anything that I want to work on up next, so kind of a smaller list of things, I can then come in and I can say, yep, I want to move this from parked into up next. And then that comes into my up next list. So this is kind of a smaller list where I'm saying, these are the things I'm working on. It's why it's the first tab, because it gets me straight in and I'm like, oh yeah, okay, I want to work on these things. I also have a bit of a different view for YouTube videos because they have a different process for me than, let's say, like an article I want to write. There's just a few more steps. And so you can see this is exactly the same data, okay? So these are all Spark ideas. These are all Spark ideas. These are all Spark ideas. But depending on what I need at that time, I can view things in that way. So I need, when I'm doing YouTube stuff, is to know, well, what needs a script? What do I need to write a script for? Okay, let's write this script now. Or when I'm good to film or when I have some time, what's ready to film? And so I don't necessarily need to see anything else except for those things. I can also view everything that I've shipped. I don't have everything in here from before, but I do want to get it in here. But again, this is I can view all the content. I can view just my YouTube library, which I can see my thumbnails, which I really love. I can view my essays, my articles, my newsletters. I have all of the links to be able to get there. And so whatever I'm doing, I can easily find it. So that's how I manage all of my content, and I also manage all of my tweets in here. I don't have time to go exactly into that, but there's a whole lot of different ways that I create tweets, and then I have a whole lot of templates and frameworks in here as well. So there's so much data that you can keep, and so many ways that you can easily just add a tag and say, that's a tweet, that's an article, that's a thing, that's a that. And then it just gets to the right place, which is really exciting. And so then the last thing that I use Tana for is my knowledge library. So that is where I keep all of the notes that come in with things I'm reading. And I then sit every morning and I write about those, and I take atomic notes, which are more notes about what I think about that thing and really how I build knowledge. And then all of those notes then come in here and are connected into a cluster note. And I just build my knowledge that way, and a lot of these then turn into content. So I hope you liked that really short overview of how I'm using Tana. I think it's a really exciting tool that does bring together people who really need that flow and just be able to get things in, and people who need then a little bit of structure to be able to then find that again and view all of those things in a whole lot of different ways. And so I think there's something really special about what the team have built here, and I'm really excited to keep using it and to keep seeing it expand. And if you want to know anything else, please reach out to me on Twitter. I love to talk about this kind of stuff, and it's the best place to find me. You can just find me at Evelyn C, EVIELYNC. and I'd love to connect.
Having used Tana for about a week, there are some great positives, some interesting things about the tool, but also not necessarily negatives, but things I'm missing from Obsidian, which is my main app of choice. If you're unfamiliar, I'm going to give you a little bit of a walk around to help you understand what I'm doing and what I'm clicking, because it's not the same as most other apps. This right here is my personal workspace. This is a different workspace, and this VC2 is also a different workspace. So I have 3 workspaces in this Tana account. When I click on Schema, it brings up essentially a long list of all of my super tags, or just tags, and these, for those of Obsidian users, these are essentially templates, or if you're in Notion, these are sort of your templates inside of your database. On the right, you'll see a reference number count, and this is how many times it's been referenced. So I've got 51 days, and that's because I've gone backwards in day, and it's applied the tag to the day. And if I push on these numbers, it shows me where that tag has been used. So I've used the source in 4 different places. And this is one of those settings that you can activate inside the settings cog. So if you look at preferences, I'm not going to go through all of these, but you can sort of pause the screen and see what's going on. So that's the settings in there. That's the settings in there. You can see I've got most of them turned on. And the import for Tana is also really good. I'm not a Roam user or workflow, so there's an Obsidian sort of conversion from Markdown to JSON, and then you'd import it through here. And it works, it just doesn't work with all of Markdown. When I click on library, it shows all of the nodes that don't have a parent node, so essentially a file where it would normally be stored. So the daily note is a daily node. Instead of having a heading, you have a node with indented nodes underneath. And because these nodes are authors or directors of content, they weren't stored anywhere, so they've appeared in the library. When I click on the reference number, reference being the terminology for backlink or inlink, you can see Ben is referenced to a podcast and a video. And if I expand that node, you can see some other information, and this is where that Ben node is. It's a pink Ben node because of the hashtag person, which you can see in the schema over here, but the podcast node information is green because of the hashtag source. So I've got a node inside of a node which is actually part of a field. And instead of expanding the podcast node, if I click on the node, so click on the green node, it takes me to the node. So I've actually got some notes, traditional notes, which are just nodes, bullets, inside of that note. Then I've got fields, which are like your properties in a database page of Notion, or your metadata or YAML inside of Obsidian. These fields had information, the author being Ben, that's the Ben node. And when I go to the top of this, a podcast node, you can see it's actually stored in yesterday's daily node, which when I click on has its own field. So it's orange fields because it's the orange day tag. It's got lots of other nodes in it, which are just notes. And you can see if I click and expand the podcast node, this is where we were, but this is now the embedded version. So if I click on the green node, it takes me to where I was, sort of narrowed in. I'm going to drag the schema down below and then open up the settings. Now the settings inside of my home workspace is slightly different to the other workspaces. I've recorded my own hotkeys, which if you go to the top right, you can see these are the hotkeys and you can change them however you want. And that's saved inside of the settings. And pretty much all the other settings I've kept the same. Now, even though I've imported 2 different Obsidian vaults, so this is a small vault, this is my main vault sort of copy, I can allow this workspace, so this personal workspace, to look for the nodes in there, but I don't want to allow that because there are far too many things in there and it just clutters my space while I'm learning Tana. So if I go to the sidebar, you can see this is just showing exactly what is inside this main page. The calendar, which takes you to the daily note, and you can go to the previous day, next day, go to a day, and then select whichever day you want. Or you can switch the calendar because there's a different calendar for a different workspace. So my Vaultcraft, my actual Obsidian Vault, has its own calendars, so daily notes and things, but I don't want to use that because, like I said, it's just too cluttered at the moment. And then if I go to the top of the screen, I've got a today button, so I can open up today's daily note, which is actually like today, like now. It's not a note, it's a node, but same difference. Because each daily node has a hashtag day, so it's been super tagged with day, I can configure the tag. And this is where you add your template information. So I have a search node inside of the hashtag day. So anything tagged with hashtag day will get this template information. There could be normal bullet points or YAML property field information. These are all the different fields you could use, which are typical fields you'd expect from most databases. So your select, your multi-select, your date, your number, user, URL, etc. Which if I go to my Learning Tana, I've actually created. It is a database, but it's not. It's like a page of a database that has fields. So you've got test field, so that's what it is, and then you've got all the different things you can put in. This is to help me remember what's going on, and you can see here this bullet looks a little different. You might not be able to see. I'm gonna zoom in, but because it's a browser, like it's a browser type app, it works on like percentages and anyway. So I've zoomed in, and now we've got like dots around this node, and that's because this node isn't originally in this learning Tana node. It's actually stored somewhere else. So if I hover over, you'll be able to see up here in the breadcrumb, Danny Hatcher calendar 2022, week 42, yesterday, Thursday, 20th of October, a podcast. So a second podcast point is actually from a podcast. So when I click the node, I know that this was in a podcast. I can click on a podcast and there it is. But going back to the daily node, I've got a search query and it's very similar to an Obsidian data view query or DB folder query, a logseek query, a Roam query. All essentially the same thing, just different languages. When I push on live query, it then gives me the window to add the query. In this case, I'm looking for all of the to-do tasks, so the checkboxes that are not done, which happen to be this, 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 and this. Nothing too exciting. As I click on learn more, you can see all of the different stuff, and there is a lot of onboarding help, which is great, but I don't find any advanced uses for queries at the moment because I'm mimicking what I do in Obsidian inside of Tana. And just for clarification, when I click on the tag, I go to configure, that search query is configured inside of the template information of the tag which is in here. These red nodes are project nodes, and it's very similar to the hashtag day, but I've got hashtag YouTube video, and when I click on the tag, go to configure, I then have field information. So these are field tasks, these are templated tasks that go onto everything that is tagged with YouTube video. I then have a search query, you can tell by the search icon, that looks for everything that's got a YouTube video. I'm then viewing it in a table view because list doesn't tell you much apart from what the node is. The card again is just a bit cluttered for me, and tabs isn't my preference. I don't have a filter on this yet because I haven't quite got the filters working the way I would like it, but I do have a sort which is sorting by deadline. And these fields are just checkbox fields that you would expect in Notion, and this priority is a select property. It's got high, medium, and low for different priority levels. I can change the date using the date picker, and then click on X, and now it's changed the date. And because these are nodes, you can expand the node and then add information, so the notes inside of this database view, I guess you'd call it. Then if you click on the node, you've got the field information and then the notes down the bottom. This people search is doing essentially the same thing as the project search, but it's looking for people instead. So when we go to live query, it's looking for the person tag. And just as a reminder, the people are inside of the field information of a source note. So that's where the person is from this source. So this would be a video that I've watched. The external link would go into here. The author, that's the person, and then all the notes for the video. Then I have my notes, and this again is a live query looking for the hashtag working, and I'm trying to mimic what I have in Obsidian inside of Tana to see how it would work. It's not quite the same, but I have my depth, quality, and understanding subjective value of my notes. These are just arbitrary values that I've put in here, but this is going to create an epistemological value that I've put onto this note with how good or how bad I think this note may be for my understanding of the topic anyway. Still need to figure out how to do that inside of Tana. I can do it in Obsidian with a JS formula, but that's besides the point. But when I go into this, what I would call a working note, I have the properties at the top, or the fields at the top, and then I have the main script. Now at the moment there isn't headings and stuff, you have to do CSS, so this is what I'm working with. And you can see I've referenced this source video. I haven't figured out quite how I want to do this yet, but if I go into the source video down the bottom, you can see the references or backlinks, and you can see it's been linked in the daily note, but also in the productivity page, so the backlinks work in Tana the way you would expect them to work in Roam, Obsidian, Logseek, etc. When I go to one of the other workspaces, you can see I've got a members tab, and this is probably the most exciting feature I have for Tana at the moment, is that you can invite quite easily other people into your Tana workspace and then let them search through notes or nodes and files and things like that. Now I will be doing a deeper comparison between Tana and Obsidian because Obsidian isn't like the other tools Tana's being compared to. Tana is more like Logseek, Roam, Notion, online cloud-based tools, whereas Obsidian is it's kind of like its own beast, its own thing. But Tana is still in development. The team are very quick at making patches and bug fixing and changing things, and they talk to the community, which is great. So I don't see myself switching to Tana over Obsidian because Obsidian can do things that you can't quite do in Tana yet, but we'll have to see what happens in the future. So thank you, Francesco, for having me on the channel, and for everyone watching, hopefully you learned something new about Tana if you don't have access, which I know a lot of people are struggling with.